Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another Sunday prep. As always, my list was a lot longer than I actually got done, but that's okay. This Sunday prep ended up being more of a how many breads can I cook in one day kind of thing, on accident. On purpose? I don't know. But anyway, I felt like all I did was cook bread all day, and you'll see. So if you're wanting to cook some bread, this is a video for you. For dinner Sunday night, this happened to be Easter, I put in a beef roast. So I was just like, I had no recipe or anything I was following. I just grabbed some things to make. So I put in a can of cream of mushroom, and I usually like to put in with that like an onion, Lipton onion packet, but I didn't have any. So I did have this savory pot roast packet. So I put that in. And then I was like, wow, that's real thick. So I added some water. I didn't even measure. I just poured some water in, and then I put the roast in, seasoned it with salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder on both sides. And then I turned it on low for 10 hours. And we had that later that night. Oh, I filled the can up like halfway, I think, with water. Just watching this while I'm talking. And then I just mixed all that around. And while I was doing this, I was like, man, I should really be using a whisk, but I didn't want to dirty any extra dishes, so I just used that. And you know what? It ended up being fine. Also decided to cut up 2 onions and throw it in with the roast as well. So here I am. I just like roughly chopped it, diced it in big chunks, and threw it on in there. I think Wilder might end up helping me with this voiceover. He's right beside me now. So here I am getting some water to boil to make some sweet tea, and I'm also putting some eggs in the Instant Pot to make some hard-boiled eggs. My kids love these for snacks or to go along with their breakfast or lunch or just whatever throughout the day. And I also end up sending them with Gary throughout the week for his work. He snacks on them as well. It's just such a cheap and healthy little snack, and so easy to grab as well. Mr. Wildman eating some yogurt just so I can keep him contained so I can get some of this stuff done. When my water's done boiling, I just pour it in the pitcher that is actually a gallon-sized tea bag, so I only needed one. I let it steep for a while. While the water's still warm, I do add sugar so it can dissolve, and then I fill the rest of it up with water. Here's a box of meat I asked Gary to go get for the week. Some of it I had to thaw for the next day or two, and then the ground beef I needed throughout the week. So here I am making that honey wheat bread. I did make this on my last Sunday prep. It is so good, and it's so easy. I will have the recipe down below, but first you need to put in 2.5 cups of warm water, 1.5 tablespoons of yeast, and 2 cups of whole wheat flour, and then you set it to the side and let it rise for 15 to 20 minutes. So I did go ahead and get that part out of the way, and then I moved on to a few other things while the stuff was rising. after I got my eggs out, I washed the Instant Pot insert, and then it was back to it again. I asked Gary to get me some elbow noodles. This is what he brought up, and that's fine. My kids like buttered noodles throughout the week. I always heard the rule for the Instant Pot is half the amount of time on the box, so that said 9 to 11 minutes, so I did 5 minutes, and it worked really good. Just cover the pasta with water, do half the time on the box, and it always works like a charm for me. I've never had an issue with it, and it is my favorite way to do noodles now. I haven't made Gary creamer in a while. He's just been using whatever we have store-bought wise, but I use this quart jar. I think it's a quart mason jar. I use 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. It is a 14-ounce can. Yes, sweetened condensed. Pour it in there. I add some vanilla. I don't measure. You'll see in a minute I hold it up. I just pour it so it's like maybe a quarter or a half inch above the sweetened condensed milk. I just eyeball it now, and then you mix that around and then fill the rest of it up with milk, and it'll last as long as your milk would last. I would say don't do past your milk expiration date, but yeah, I just filled it up with some whole milk because that's all we ever drink is whole milk. That's all we ever have, so I use that, and he now has some fresh creamer. Oh, and everyone always asks me where I get the pour spouts, the little black top. You'll see it in a minute. I got a 2-pack off of Amazon. I will try to remember to link it below for you guys. I love them. They're so awesome to have on hand if you do it. Whenever I make like a homemade barbecue sauce or anything, I'll put it in a mason jar and I'll use the pour spout. They're really convenient to have. Now, someone commented the other day and said that she had made bread machine bagels. I think her name was Kathy. And I was like, oh my gosh, give me the recipe. So she told me to look it up on Pinterest, and I just searched. I used the first recipe I found on Pinterest. But anyway, you make it right in the bread machine, and you use 1 cup of water, 1.5 teaspoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3 cups of flour. I just used regular all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of yeast, and then you put it on the dough cycle. And then I let that go, and when it was done, I'll tell you in a minute what I did. So for the purpose of the video, I'm showing it to you in order. I'm not gonna have you wait until like later in the day to see how I finish these. So I went ahead and added the clips from, an hour and a half later when this dough was done. When it's done, you shape them into balls. It says 10 to 12. And then you push your thumb through the middle to make the hole, and you shape them into bagel like shapes. Mine don't look the best. Mine are all crinkly. They're not smooth and beautiful. They're ugly and delicious though. I did try them. They do taste like bagels, but they look horrible and scary, but that's okay. It'll take some work. It'll take some practice. When you're done, you brush them with some soft or melted butter, and then you cover with wax paper and a towel and let them rise for 30 minutes. When that 30 minutes is up, you bring 3 quarts of water and 1 tablespoon of sugar to a boil, reduce heat, then add the bagels and simmer 1 to 2 minutes per side. Pull them out, drain them on a towel, then place them back on the cookie sheet, brush with egg wash, and then bake at 400 for 25 to 30 minutes. I did 25 minutes and mine were fine. But again, mine were funny looking, but they were cooked. to probably the best thing that I made. This was new. I'd never done this before, but they are Texas Roadhouse rolls, and you make the dough right in the bread maker. And oh my wow, this will definitely be made a lot more often. They taste just like the rolls from Texas Roadhouse. They were so good. But you do 1/4 cup of warm water, 1 cup of warm milk, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1½ tablespoons of butter, 1 egg, 1/4 cup of sugar, 3½ cups of flour. I just used all-purpose flour, 2¼ teaspoons of yeast, or 1 packet of yeast. Put it on the dough cycle. This recipe is so simple. When it's done, you pull it out, shape it into a rectangle, fold it over, let it rest for 15 minutes. And then the recipe said to use a pizza cutter to cut it into 18 pieces. I found the pizza cutter hard, and I just ended up using one of my flat, sharp knives. It was not serrated, so it was like a smoother knife, whatever those are called. And then you bake at 350 for 10 to 15 minutes, and when they come out, brush the tops with butter. These were so good. I can't even express how delicious they were. The taste is just amazing, and they were done perfectly. So this recipe will definitely be added into our rotation very, very often. And again, it was so easy in the Instant Pot. My only recommendation is do not use the pizza cutter. Again, like I said, the smooth knife worked the best for me. Now back to the honey wheat bread after it has risen for 15 to 20 minutes. I think mine was more like 30 by this point. But you add 1/3 cup of honey, 1/3 cup of oil, 2½ teaspoons of salt, and then you add another 4 cups of whole wheat flour. Last time I made this, I did not have 6 cups of whole wheat flour. So I did 2 cups of whole wheat flour because that's all I had left, and I did 4 cups of all-purpose flour, and it was still good. This time I ended up getting 50 pounds of whole wheat flour the other day, so I have plenty to make, so I made all of it whole wheat, and it's just as good. But anyway, mix all that up in your mixer, knead for 6 to 7 minutes with the bread hook, and then you form it into 2 loaves and place in 2 greased 9x5 pans. Let it rise for an hour and a half, and then you bake at 350 for 30 minutes. And this is going to be our sandwich bread for the week. Here I am finishing the tea. I take the tea bag out and squeeze all the extra flavor out of it, I guess. I don't even know what you call it. And then, again, I add 1.5 cups of sugar and then stir that around so it dissolves. And then just fill it up with cold water and mix it around, and it's good to go. I decide I'm gonna make some cornbread muffins. I had a box of this Jiffy cornbread mix upstairs, and I had 3 leftover hot dogs from the other day when we made them, whenever that was, in the fridge. So I was like, I'm gonna use all this stuff up. So you make the Jiffy stuff according to the box, and then I chopped up the hot dogs, and then I added some shredded Fiesta cheese and put it in there, and baked them at 400 because that's what the box says, and I think I ended up baking them for 20 to 25 minutes, and they were delicious. to zucchini bread. The last time I did a Walmart pickup order, which was weeks ago, I got 2 zucchini. They were still good, and my purpose was to make zucchini bread. I just hadn't gotten around to it, so I finally did. This is the best zucchini recipe I've ever found. I don't remember where I got it, but it was like forever ago. I've had this recipe for so long. It is so good. If you all try this, please let me know. But I used my little KitchenAid. What is it, KitchenAid, or is it? I don't know what brand it is. But I used my food processor to shred it all, and then I just used 2 zucchini, and it was, I don't even know how many cups it was, but the recipe calls for 2 cups. I always use 2 to 3 zucchini, and it always comes out fine. And usually when you make bread, you do all the wet ingredients and all the dry, and you sift all the dry together and then add it to the wet. I'm a rebel, and I just throw everything together. I tried to kind of do it in wet order and then add the dry, but I normally, for this recipe, I've always just thrown everything together and mixed it around by hand. And I've never had an issue. It's always so good. You do 3 beaten eggs, 2 cups of sugar, 1.5 cups of vegetable oil, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 2 cups of grated zucchini, 3 cups of flour. I used all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of baking powder, 3 teaspoons of cinnamon. And I just read it in order of my typed recipe. I did it differently in the video, but it's all the same ingredients. And then you bake at 350 for 1 hour. It is the best recipe you will ever taste. I also ended up adding some chocolate chips at the end. I just did semi-sweet, and we've eaten almost all of it already. And I usually bake it in 2 9x5 pans, but my 9x5 pans had honey wheat bread in it, so I ended up using my 2 Pullman pans, and I think mine cooked a little bit faster because they were smaller size loaves. I mean longer, but thinner, so mine cooked a little bit faster this time. But use 2 9x5s and bake for an hour, and they usually come out good. So I had planned on doing more than breads for the day, but it seems bread is all that I made. And here's an overlook of all of them. I guess we love breads around here, but it made my life a lot simpler throughout this week because I do have all the kids back home and everything is just going to be crazy. Everybody's home all day, every day, so it's going to be lots of food consumed. 7 people times 3 meals a day times 1,000 snacks because kids are home. But anyway, here I am making the Dutch oven bread for our dinner on Monday because this was Sunday. I always make mine the night before, like around dinner time the night before, so it sits for about 24 hours. You do 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 to 3 teaspoons of salt, a half a teaspoon of yeast, and 1.5 cups of warm water, and you mix it all around and let it sit with plastic wrap tightly around it. Let it sit on your counter, and it says 18 to 24 hours. Again, I usually do mine around dinner time the night before so I can cook it for dinner time the next day, and that's how I've always done it, and it's always worked really great. It sits about 24 hours, and it's one of our favorites, and it is very dense and crispy, but it's good. Again, I will have all these recipes down below for you. I will try to link anything I can. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sorry it ended up being mostly breads, but again, I'm not sorry because we love bread and bread is so delicious. Thank you guys for watching again, and I will see you tomorrow with a brand new video. Let me know if there's anything you want to see me prep that you've seen me make and I've never prepped it before. I don't know. Let me know if there's anything you want to see from us, and I will try to make it happen. Again, thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and enjoy these other videos we have coming up for you. Also, you can turn on the red bell notifications so you're notified of every new video we post. Thank you so much.